What is going on, guys? Matt O'Leary back with another video. Today is Sunday. There is no New York Jets football today. So instead of doing any pregame, postgame things, I wanted to talk about a problem that the Jets could have. Also, I'm excited because I am going to the game on Monday Night Football, Jets Chargers. It'll be myself, Ryan from Jets Talk 24/7, and Green Bean. We got a big group of people hanging out in Lot E26 before the game. Very excited about that. In the game, we'll be up in section 340. So if you're not sitting with us and just want to say hello, figured I'd give you that info. But the Jets might have a problem for this game, and that's really what I want to get into today. All right, it is time for my Underdog Fantasy picks of the week. Sign up using my code linked down below in the pinned comment and the description of the video. They, for a limited time only, are giving you a 100% match deposit bonus for up to $500. That is you depositing $500, and Underdog Fantasy will give you then $500. Let's get in on the action. There are three things from this game, Jets Chargers, that I love. The first is Austin Eckler over rushing attempts, 13.5. He has hit that number every single game that he has played in so far this year. He's played 4 games, has hit it 4 times. As for the next play, I want Garrett Wilson over 5.5 receptions. He has gone over to that number in 4 of the last 5 games. The last 2 games from Garrett Wilson, 7 catches, 8 catches. They're starting to force feed him the football as they should. And last but certainly not least, let's go to Tyler Conklin, higher on 2.5 receptions. He didn't have any catches last week and just 2 targets, but before that, he went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row clearing that number. So $10, put that in. 3 correct gets you 60. Sign up using my code over at Underdog Fantasy. So we got the final injury report earlier yesterday. I guess at this point, yesterday it came out. We found out Dwayne Brown is out, which isn't crazy surprising. And on the offensive line, got some good news that Laken Tomlinson's going to be in and Joe Tippmann is going to be in. So pretty good news on the offensive line. You'd have to assume going from left to right, you would have Mekhi Becton at left tackle. You'd have Laken Tomlinson at left guard. At center, Joe Tippmann, who's played at right guard for his entire rookie season, will now kick over to his natural position at center. Right tackle would be Max Mitchell. And at right guard, more likely than not, my assumption is it's going to be Billy Turner. Could they elevate their latest addition, Roger Saffold? They could. We'll keep an eye on that, but I would assume that it's going to be Billy Turner. Moral of the story is 4 out of the 5 offensive line spots are shored up, and you have to feel a hell of a lot more comfortable about the offensive line going into this game. The issue is we have a new addition to the injury report where Allen Lazard is now questionable for the game on Monday. And the last couple of weeks, I understand Allen Lazard has had some issues with some drops. His drop percentage is way too high. But the reason why this is a big concern for me is because the Jets' depth at the wide receiver position is terrible. It is absolutely terrible. So if he is unable to go, if Allen Lazard, for whatever reason, cannot play, things get really rough. So this is what I was talking about before the trade deadline. A reason why I was so adamant about the Jets adding a wide receiver, and it didn't have to be a Davante Adams type of level. And I was happy to see that they were supposedly in on Davante Adams and Mike Evans and those guys. They needed to add some, like a warm body, someone who could come in and play the position, a professional there. That's why, a Cortland Sutton, a Hunter Renfrow, there were multiple options. Instead, the Jets stayed put with their wide receiver room. Okay, fine. But the problem, again, goes to they could not afford an injury to either Allen Lazard or Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's the obvious because he's the best wide receiver the Jets have. He is a bona fide number 1 receiver. He is a stud. There is no denying his talent. And I understand some fans have been frustrated with Allen Lazard. He hasn't had a great last couple of games, but still, he is one of the few guys that you are comfortable with at the wide receiver room. Is he spectacular? No, but he is a professional NFL wide receiver. Beyond that, you have Randall Cobb, who would essentially be who's been your number 3 receiver, which is not ideal to begin with. When he was brought in to be this team's, at the time, it felt like 5th receiver, did not have nearly as much of a problem with it because you could do a hell of a lot worse at wide receiver 5 than Randall Cobb. But now at wide receiver 3, or with an injury to Allen Lazard, potential wide receiver 2, that is a big issue. Now, Xavier Gipson, we understand, is playing a bigger role, and I like Xavier Gipson. I think he's a good special teamer, and he's someone who should get 2 or 3 manufactured touches a game, whether it's a screen, an end around, a little bubble, a slant, something. I'm not saying, and I never was saying early on in the year, that Xavier Gipson needed to be someone who was getting, 7 targets a game and playing this big role. He is not, I don't think, ready for that, but he is going to be forced to be ready for that now, because if Allen Lazard can't go, then what the hell do you do? And beyond that, you have Jason Brownlee, who I thought shown some flashes in training camp. And I'm not anti-Brownlee or Xavier Gipson. In fact, I like the potential of both of those guys. But when you're in a season for when you're fighting for a playoff spot, and you could potentially have 2 undrafted free agent rookies in your wide receiver core playing some significant roles, that's an issue. And beyond that, like, Irv Charles, Malik Taylor, are they moving the needle? I don't know. So the Jets better hope that Allen Lazard is healthy enough to play in this game, because if he's not, it gets ugly real quick. And again, that points back to my original point before the trade deadline, and my criticism right after the trade deadline was, I don't know if they have enough at the wide receiver room. They weren't expecting Corey Davis to retire right before the eve of the season. That was a major blow. And then they end up trading Mecole Hardman away because he doesn't have a role on this team, because what they were planning his role to be, they believe that Xavier Gipson took that role. Okay, fine. I understand that. You move him, you bring him back or put him back with the Kansas City Chiefs. You got a pick swap, whatever. But that depth, if God forbid you miss either Garrett Wilson or Allen Lazard, was going to be questioned. And immediately it is something that comes into play. Trade deadline was what? Monday of this past week? Tuesday of this past week? Whenever Halloween was. The point remains the same. The next week after the trade deadline, the next game, it's potentially coming into play. It's not good. It's really not good. So it's going to make life harder on Zach Wilson. It's going to make life harder on Nathaniel Hackett and this offense, which is already struggling. Of course, they have Breece Hall, who is a dynamic player. Of course, they have Garrett Wilson, who's a dynamic player. But you're going to have to be able to adjust now. You're going to have to use Breece Hall more in the passing attack. You're going to have to use your tight ends significantly more, because this wide receiver room, questionable. Very questionable. And if, God forbid, Allen Lazard can't go on Monday Night Football, that gets ugly pretty quick. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Once again, I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll catch you next time.